It's another windy day at the Hutchinson House Experimental Sea Island Cotton Plot. Once again, apologies for the wind, but I am at the weather's mercy. Speaking of which, the drought has continued. We did have an inch of rain this last weekend, maybe an inch and a half, maybe even 2 inches, which is quite nice, and there's still some subsoil moisture, but I'm still deeply concerned about the health of the plants. We had many more drought kills than I would like. For example, here's one that is currently dying. And here is my first dead space. All 3 of the plants that were here at 3-1 have dried up, so I now have 1 void out of 54. Over here on 4, you can see a couple of dead plants. There's another. These do not look so good. I do not have good faith in this one. I expect that one to die. Another dead plant. I have just finished weeding and hilling the plants. As you can see, I have gotten quite aggressive with my hill formation, and that's because I've really learned that the deeper I make these, the more water they hold. They're just going to fill in with each watering, so it's best to make them deep and tall, because after the first watering they fill in almost halfway, which just leaves a nice little depression, which is great for at least 1 more, if not 2 more irrigations. The reason I am making this video right now is because I have decided to change my experimental procedure. My initial experimental parameters were to test whether or not irrigation or macronutrient fertilization had any significant impact on the growth and survival of the cotton, especially its establishment, as well as its productivity. And from what I can see today, irrigation is absolutely critical to the establishment of the crop, especially, and in conjunction with that, fertilization is also critical to the establishment of the crop. I don't know whether or not either will have much in the way of an impact on productivity. I'm assuming fertilization will have a very large impact on fruit productivity, but I am not entirely certain that irrigation will once the plants reach maturity. But I believe I have learned everything I need to know from that original experimental procedure. As you can clearly tell, the plants here in the irrigated fertilized row absolutely dwarf everything else. These plants in just the fertilized row are also quite stout, but the plants are not nearly as mature, nor are they as large, nor are the leaves as large. I've also been examining which plants retain their cotyledons and which lose them. I'm going to look into that and see if I can find any sort of correlation. I believe that the plants that had the most drought stress lost their cotyledons first, and that if they were stunted in any way, shape, or form and experienced more drought stress, they were more prone to death. Because from what I can tell, the plants that have dried up thus far did not have any cotyledons, which tells me they either shed them early on and did not have them as a storage tank for water later when they were drought stressed again, or the loss of cotyledons seems to indicate that they are in drought stress. I don't know. Not an agriculturalist, I'll look into that. That's just my theory for the moment. Anyway, that's all subjective, just my opinion, so I'll let the data speak for itself. I'm going to do a little bit more data analysis to look at a bunch of other stuff, but the data should be very telling as far as the growth rate of the plant, the amount of cotyledons lost, the rate they were lost, what depth lost the cotyledons. Of note on the fertilization, I believe these 2 plants right here got a double dose of fertilizer, got a little bit more fertilizer than they should have. I'll go back and I'll check the tapes on that episode and see if that is in fact correct. But I believe they got over-fertilized, and if they did, that would be telling, because these 2 are by far the best looking spaces. There's a couple of other decent looking ones up here, but these are just leaps and bounds ahead of everything. And the fact that all 4 of these and all 3 of these, and I don't remember whether or not that had a mortality or if that was just a failure to germinate, but the fact that all of these plants look exceptional in one space seems to tell me it's a microclimatic thing, micro habitat thing, micro soil conditions, etc., some sort of micro environmental factor that has resulted in their exceptional growth, and not just, say, seed quality or the overarching quality of the row they're in. I've also noticed that the spacing of the plant in the row makes a big difference. These plants out here on the end caps and on the front seem to experience stunting. The plants are not as healthy, with the exception of that row over there. They don't seem to be doing as well. Those are all dried up. Those are all dried up. That one's got a dry one. That one doesn't look terrible. Row 1 doesn't seem to be as affected by this, and I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know if they're getting extra shade or something like that. Could all just be a figment of my imagination. But it's likely because they're on the end of the row, and they have more weed competition for nutrients, as well as weed competition for water, and they're also exposed to more sunlight. But whatever. So the point of this whole video is that I am now going to change my experimental procedure to include mulching, because I believe adding some form of mulch to the top of the soil in order to trap in water and suppress weeds, instead of having to weed and then hill, will be far, far, far more effective than what I'm doing right now, and it'll save me a whole bunch of time, and it'll be better for the plants. That's at least what I am thinking, and it makes sense to me in every other way. It works with other crops. Why wouldn't it work with cotton? The only reason I hadn't done that is because I did not want to disregard my current experiment that's going on. But from what I can see right now, the findings are clear and obvious, and it should make perfect sense to begin with. I just wanted to see whether or not the soil conditions that I had and the report I had gotten on the soil analysis were correct and that I could believe them. But it seems that fertilization as well as irrigation, at least in the vegetative stage, is critical. So I will be doing that going forth, so long as I have the resources to do so. Alrighty, it's been a few weeks. We had one of our major events and it consumed all of my time, so I have not been able to moss any of the cotton, and I think I might be getting to the point where it may not be necessary anymore. As you can see from this huge over-excess of weeds, and the fact that some of this cotton has about tripled in size, we have had like a week and a half straight of rain. We've gotten like 6 inches or something, and the cotton has just absolutely rebounded. I mean, look at these suckers. It's almost 8 inches tall now. I don't think I had much of anything past, I don't think anything had broken 6 last week. So, it's doing a world of good, but we had some casualties. That continuous drought induced a bout of sortian infection in a lot of the plants, especially the fertilized plants. And so now we have quite a few voids. That's the first plant left on this row. That's space 6. And then we have another void and another void. And then some plants and another void. So that's row 3. That's the worst looking one. But yeah, I'm glad it was just the rain. So, well, not just the rain, but the humidity as well. It has done a world of wonder for the cotton, because this stuff rebounded almost overnight once we had a nice solid rainfall with 2 or 3 inches. So that's the update. That's where we're at. A lot of mortality, but we've had a generous amount of rainfall, so the plants have finally been able to establish and actually get some momentum going, and I'm going to have to be out here later this week weeding the absolute snot out of this, so stay tuned for that. I've got a loop hoe in the Jeep, so I'm going to do my first listing of the sides of the beds and then really weed the snot out of the top of the beds, and that should help the cotton again because they won't have any competitors anymore. So I've been putting that off until the rain comes by so that the row will stay together when I start weeding. So I'm probably going to do that maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, may not even get to it till Friday. We've got a whole bunch of backlog from this event. I'm going to have to be inputting a lot of data, mailing out a lot of stuff. So whenever I finally get a chance, I'm going to be able to get back to this cotton, and hopefully this will be the beginning of a long and successful summer with plenty of rain and not more of that. More of that. So, Tom out.